Lost civilizations, right. It's a topic that just, like, grabs everyone's imagination. And, you guys sent us this awesome source to really dig into, ranking lost civilizations, from historical facts to impossible theories. So, listeners, buckle up, because this deep dive, it's going to be a wild ride.
It really is. You know, what I find so fascinating about this source is, well, how it breaks down these lost civilizations, you see. We're not just talking about places that vanished, but like the different levels of evidence we have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of like a reality check.
Yeah.
Like which ones are grounded in history and which ones are more speculative, let's say. So to kind of set the stage for our listener today, could you maybe break down that ranking system a bit?
Sure. So it starts with C tier, documented but disappeared. Think like Sumerians or the Indus Valley people, even the Mayans, right? Tons of evidence, but they're gone. We have a pretty good grasp on why, though. Environment, societal changes, that kind of thing.
Okay, so that's our C tier. Then we step it up, right,
Yep.
to the B tier. Documented, but with historical gaps. So these are cultures where, like, we've got some pieces of the puzzle, but big parts are just missing, like Atlantis, for example. Talk about a debate that just won't quit.
Exactly. And then we get to the really juicy stuff, the A tier. Controversial civilizations. Now, this is where it gets interesting for me. We're talking civilizations mentioned in old texts, theories, that kind of thing, but without that solid archaeological proof to back it up.
Okay, so let's start our journey back in time, with the C tier. Documented, but disappeared. And first up, well, I'm a sucker for a good invention story. And the Sumerians, they really deliver. We're talking cuneiform here, people, as in the world's very first writing system.
It's mind-blowing, right? I mean, think about it. Writing is everything to us. Our laws, history, even our own little stories, it's all thanks to writing. And the Sumerians, with their cuneiform on those clay tablets, they were doing this thousands of years ago. They used it for everything, recording epic poems like the Epic of Gilgamesh, to laying down the law with the Code of Hammurabi.
It's crazy how this one innovation basically laid the foundation for, well, everything, civilization as we know it. But speaking of incredible civilizations, let's hop over to the Indus Valley. I mean, these guys were known for their ridiculously well-planned cities. Like, they had plumbing systems that put some medieval European cities to shame.
Seriously, their urban planning was like centuries ahead of its time. But the biggest head scratcher they left us with is their script. We just can't crack it. All these intricate symbols, but we can't read them. It's like having a treasure map, but in a language you don't understand.
Man, it just makes you wonder what incredible stuff we're missing out on. If we could just figure out how to read what they wrote. Now, I can't resist a good calendar mystery. And the Mayans, they deliver this incredibly complex calendar system they had.
Unbelievably accurate, too. I mean, they could predict astronomical events with, like, pinpoint accuracy. It just shows you how deeply they understood those celestial cycles and how central that was to their lives and beliefs.
Imagine that. Planning your festivals, your whole life around the stars with that kind of accuracy. All right, let's talk about a civilization that's, well, the stuff of legends. The Minoans. Their palaces, especially that one in Knossos with like that whole labyrinth thing going on. It always makes me think of the myth of the Minotaur.
Oh, absolutely. The Minoans, this Bronze Age civilization on the island of Crete. Their art, their buildings, even their plumbing, way ahead of their time. Now, we can't say for sure what caused their decline, but there's some pretty convincing evidence pointing to a massive volcanic eruption. We're talking about Thera, which is modern-day Santorini.
Whoa, talk about going out with a bang. It really makes you think about how even the most advanced societies can be wiped out by, well, nature.
Yeah. Throughout history, natural disasters have like completely reshaped the map, haven't they? And that actually leads us nicely to our next category, the B tier, where we've got these civilizations, they definitely existed, but there are these big gaps in what we know about them. And often it's because of events like, well, you guessed it, natural disasters.
Okay, so on to the B tier. Documented, but with historical gaps.
Mm.
And we're going to kick things off with probably the most famous lost civilization of all time, Atlantis. I mean, come on, that story that Plato told about this advanced island nation just poof, swallowed by the sea. It's been captivating people for centuries. So what do you think? Just a good story, or could there be some truth to it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's amazing how much curiosity that one story has sparked. I mean, was Plato just trying to teach us a lesson with a made-up story?
Oh.
Or could he have based it on a real civilization that was lost to some crazy catastrophe?
It's like you were saying earlier, right? Separating historical fact from speculation.
Yeah.
And with Atlantis, man, that line gets so blurry, it's almost, well, it's part of what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch gears a bit here and talk about another B-tier civilization that I've always found super intriguing. Olmecs. These are the folks who carved those massive, and I mean massive, stone heads, right? I mean, seriously, the size of those things just blows my mind. Like, what did they use to make them? How did they even move them?
Right. The Olmecs are often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, and for good reason. This region, we're talking Mexico, Central America, it saw so many incredible civilizations rise and fall. And the Olmecs, they were like the trailblazers. Their art, their religious practices, even their love of a good ball game. It all gets picked up by later cultures like the Mayans and the Aztecs.
Oh, wow. So they were like the trendsetters of their time. I like
Yeah.
it. But it wasn't all giant heads and ball games, right? What else made them so influential?
Well, for starters, they were amazing engineers and architects. They built these incredible cities and ceremonial centers. And like a lot of ancient cultures, they had a deep understanding of astronomy. I mean, they were tracking the stars, developing calendars, using it all to figure out their farming cycles, religious ceremonies, the whole shebang.
Wow. Talk about in tune with the cosmos. Okay, so moving from the Olmecs, we've got another civilization that really challenges what we think we know about early cities, Corral. Am I right in saying that these guys were all about peace? Which is like pretty rare for that time period, right?
Yeah, it's really unusual. You see, a lot of ancient civilizations, they were focused on, well, conquering and expanding their territory. But Corral, they seem to be all about keeping things chill. They built these impressive cities, but without any walls or fortifications or weapons that we've found so far. Makes you think they had a very different social structure and a unique approach to, well, let's call it conflict resolution.
I love that. A peaceful civilization thriving in the ancient world. Makes you wonder what their secret was.
Right.
Okay, so from peaceful cities, let's jump over to the pretty harsh environment of the American Southwest. That's where we find the Anasazi, another one for the B tier. And these were the folks who built those incredible cliff dwellings, right?
Oh, absolutely. Talk about masters of their environment. The Anasazi, they built these incredible homes right into the sides of cliffs. Practical, but also like insanely impressive. Can you imagine the skill it took to build something like that with the tools they had back then? It really is mind-blowing. Now, the source material we're looking at, it mentions that their decline might have been connected to, wait for it, climate change. That's got to resonate with people today, right? Yeah.
For sure. It's a big one. The Anasazi, like so many civilizations throughout history, they were at the mercy of their environment. And we're talking major droughts that went on for years, most likely a huge factor in their decline. It's a powerful reminder that even the most advanced societies, they're still vulnerable to the forces of nature. Something to think about, especially these days.
Okay, so we've covered some pretty amazing civilizations so far, right? But now we're going off the map, and I mean way off the map. We're talking about the A-tier controversial civilizations. And first up, we've got a legendary lost continent that just sparks the imagination, Lemuria.
Ah, yes, Lemuria. Fascinating stuff. See, before we understood plate tectonics, that's how the Earth's continents actually move around. People, they needed an explanation, right? So they came up with the idea of a land bridge to explain how you could have similar plants and animals, across these huge oceans.
It's amazing how, scientific theories evolve as we get more information. But even though Lemuria has been, debunked, let's be honest, it still pops up everywhere, doesn't it? Books, movies, you name it.
It definitely has staying power. It's found its way into mythology, literature, even some New Age beliefs. And that just shows you how powerful these lost civilization stories are, They tap into this, deep human need for mystery, a sense of wonder about our planet's past.
I'm with you on that.
Okay.
Okay, up next on our 8-tier adventure, we have another legendary lost continent that I know you've done some serious digging on. Mu. So lay it on us. What's the verdict? Fact or fiction?
Well, to be honest with you, Mo, it's a lot like Atlantis in that way. It's a really cool story, super popular in certain circles, but there's just no real evidence to back it up. Archaeologically speaking, geologically speaking, it just doesn't hold water.
It's a good reminder that just because something's a good story doesn't make it true. Now, our next A-tier civilization, Tartessos. This one's a real head-scratcher. We're talking about a civilization that was mentioned by the ancient Greeks, the Romans, known for being crazy wealthy, big on trade, but its exact location. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Right. It's a real mystery. Some experts think it could be a real place, like a city, maybe a whole region on the Iberian Peninsula that's just waiting to be uncovered. And there are some pretty serious archaeological digs going on in that area as we speak.
Okay, now that's what I call a real-life treasure hunt.
All right.
Last but not least, on our A-tier list, we've got, how do I put this? We've got a civilization that sounds like it's straight out of a fantasy novel. Hyperborea, this legendary land way up north, beyond the cold and the darkness. We're talking about a place where the sun always shines, where people live forever, basically paradise on Earth.
Right. It definitely sounds more like a myth than a historical civilization, but it does make you think, why are we so drawn to these stories about idyllic lost worlds? Where did they come from?
Yeah, I mean, it's like we're hardwired to dream of better places, better
Yeah,
times. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. These stories, real or, more like myths, they still have this power to just like capture our imaginations today.
They really do. And you know what I find really interesting? These lost civilizations, even the ones that are probably more symbolic, they can actually tell us a lot about the people who told those stories.
Oh, totally. Like
Yeah.
take Hyperborea, right?
Yeah.
That whole idea of it being this perfect land of sunshine and harmony, it kind of gives us a glimpse into how the ancient Greeks, how they saw their own world, right? And maybe what they wished for.
Exactly. It's like a window into their values, their beliefs, their hopes and dreams. It's not just about what was actually out there. It's about what they could imagine, you know?
Man, that is such a good point. It's like archaeology. It's not just about digging up like old buildings and stuff. It's about digging up the dreams and the fears of the people who lived back then.
Totally agree. And when we look at these lost civilizations through that lens, it just adds a whole new layer of like depth to our understanding of history, and just like the human experience as a whole.
Right. It reminds us that people, no matter what time period, they've always been wrestling with the same big questions, haven't they? Like, where do we come from? What does it mean to live a good life? What happens after we die? These lost civilizations, they kind of connect us to that shared human experience across like thousands of years.
Absolutely. And more than that, they remind us that the things we think we know about the past, they can always change, As we find new stuff, as we look at the old stuff with fresh eyes, it's never really over.
Speaking of looking with fresh eyes, as we wrap up our deep dive here, is there one big takeaway, one big thought that you'd want to leave our listeners with today?
I think the most important thing to remember is this. When we search for these lost civilizations, we're really searching for ourselves. It's about understanding where we fit in the big scheme of things, and recognizing that human curiosity, ingenuity, our need to tell stories, it's powerful stuff. It connects us all.
I love that. So to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep asking those big questions, and never lose that sense of wonder, right? Because who knows? Maybe you'll be the one to make the next big discovery that changes how we see the past.